Rolling tin fist.
Hello, man. This is a video I should have done a while ago, and I don't know why. This is going to be a three-part series on foreign women. By foreign, I don't mean just a woman foreign to where you're from or where you live or where you grew up, but specifically a non-Westernized woman who has not been exposed to Western, particularly gynocentric, non-traditional values. So that's what I mean. This will be in three parts. The first part will be the good, the second part, the bad, the third part, the ugly. So let's get started. In the manosphere, you'll see a lot of videos that talk about foreign women, either how great they are or how awful they are, and sometimes in the middle. And I've seen these videos, I've commented on these videos, I've commented on forums about these videos and even shared some anecdotes, but I've never actually done a video on it. And I think part of the reason is that, being at where I am in life, middle-aged, I've grown and learned and experienced that just because one person experiences a thing does not mean that is the same for everyone everywhere. There are nuances, there are differences, there are varying degrees. And there's a tendency sometimes on the internet, because somebody says one particular thing, it's assumed to be a blanket statement. And it's not. It's just one perspective. My perspective on this is that I did marry a quote-unquote foreign woman. I am from that woman's ancestral background. I have grown up in the place. I know the culture. I speak the language. I've lived there for a long time. I have been educated there. And although myself, as an American, I do have parentage from that place. And so I understand the culture quite well. And so that's part of the perspective I'm going to be coming from. Also, I've dated numerous women and had relationships with numerous foreign women from different places. And so again, I come with that experience as well as all the different nuances and drama and benefits of that. So that's where I'm coming from. And so the reason I'm sharing this is that a lot of times I will meet men abroad when I travel to places, or people who may meet my wife and, be exposed to the culture she's from and see some of the benefits of it. And, I'm asked questions, and I will usually give an answer to that particular question. So I'm going to try to address some of the things that have come up. So let's start with the good. So one of the great things about women from non-Westernized environments is that depending on the generation they're from, and that's key, you will get some of those benefits that are lauded about. And by generation, I would say Generation X and earlier versus the current millennial generation. So there's definitely a big difference. And this is amongst women in general, but especially with foreign women. Women that are from the current millennial generation have a different set of values than those from prior generation. And that's just the nature of things. And so that's something to keep in mind throughout this series. So the good things I would say of foreign women from Generation X and earlier is that there is a sense of cultural values that they adhere to. Now, specifically, these are women that were born in these non-Western environments. They were raised in these non-Western environments. Their parents, their surrounding reference groups, their schooling, their early adulthood are from these environments. They've usually moved to the Western environment, and I'll use the U.S. just as an example, either late teens or after high school. So they're coming to study or live in the U.S. after college, like in their 20s. So they're usually doing either postgraduate work or they've finished their graduate work in their country of origin, and they're coming to the United States to settle. And so with that context, one of the benefits is that they have the cultural programming from where they're from. And good examples of this is the way they dress. Typically more conservative. And even if it's attractive, sexually provocative. It's done in a subtle and distinct way. And I'll give specific examples from sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. The way women dress, even professionally, there's a sensuality to it, particularly, I would say, in my experience in Latin America, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica. But it's done with a subtlety and a class and a graciousness. In sub-Saharan Africa, it's a little more conservative, but still there's a classiness. There is there's an acceptable cultural manifestation of how they put themselves together that communicates, I am a woman, I have femininity, I'm attractive, but still that traditional conservative approach. Again, this does not go for every single woman from these locales, but this is what I'm talking about is the rule rather than the exception. When these women present themselves, it's a very proper traditional manner. In their societies, it's typically their patriarchies, in which basically the men are seen as the head of households, the providers, and in turn, for their provision of the family, their protection of the family, they are given that respect in terms of they're deferred to for decisions, they're seen for decisions. They're given authority over their families, and especially their significant others in terms of the things of life. For example, the whole idea of having to ask a father for permission, that is a real thing. That's one of the things. Although I was allowed to buck the trend a little bit because of my Americanization, I still went through that because that is part of the cultural expectation and legitimacy of going through the marital process. So that's just an example there. So those traditional values, it's not unusual for a man with a Gen X or earlier for a woman to come home. Your dinner's ready, hot, waiting for you. Your wife is looking nice, squared away. The house is clean and squared away. The kids have been handled, right? And the understanding is that, look, you've come home from a hard day. You've killed the lion, proverbial lion as it were. You've brought home the bacon, and you expect to come to a calm, relaxing environment. Now, by this, I do not mean any sort of subjugation or disrespect. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about mutual respect and that the man has done his part by providing a roof over the head, making sure the day-to-day expenses are taken care of, making sure his family has what it needs to move forward. And in turn, he receives these benefits of being taken care of emotionally. When he comes in, he's fed, if he wants a little loving, it's not something he needs to demand or schedule for, right? His needs are met. So that's one of the good benefits. Another one of the great benefits is that these foreign women understand that the household is paramount. The success of the household is paramount. So they will do things that help forward the agenda of the household. For example, something simple as grocery shopping. It's not just a matter of, oh, I'm just going to go out and buy anything I want. Oh, I need this. I'm going to shop. I'm going to spend all my husband's money and then have nothing to show for it. They will understand, particularly if you train your foreign woman. And by train, I mean let her know the realities of the Western environment in which you live in. Whether it's, look, honey, in your country, I may be upper class, but here in America, in my context, I'm actually middle class. I'm considered blue collar. And, because of that, these are the things we need to keep in mind. Foreign women will get that, and they will act accordingly in that they will make sure that, okay, if there is a budget for grocery, she will try to make that dollar, go further. She'll be conscientious of what you're trying to do to keep the family stable because it's in her best interest, right? And so those are one of the benefits. One of the other benefits is that the raising of your children, right? She will be cognizant in instilling the values that, frankly, you found attractive in her because it's part of her culture. She'll make it a point to instill those in your children as she's raising them. And that'll be anything from the way they're dressed to if it's maybe, religious services, whatever the case may be. But those traditional values that made her the wonderful, person that you met so to speak, she will instill that into your children. Those are, again, some of the good things I know that draw, particularly middle-aged men into foreign women. Now, that said, this is, in my experience, generational. So I think, obviously, the world is getting smaller with the internet. It's gotten smaller with technology, particularly social media. So this is going to be a little different from, I would say, women in their 20s who are now exposed to, WhatsApp, is exposed to Tinder, all those things. So it's not as cut and dry. You're going to have some of them that do have those values, but they will have been influenced with some Western values. But by and large, particularly if you meet these women in their country, if you meet them in the U.S., all bets are off for the most part. But I'm talking about women you come across in their country that are in the millennial demographics. With the Gen X and earlier women, they already have that cultural upbringing baked in by the time you maybe meet them around, I would say late 20s or even early 30s. So it's less of an issue. But with millennials, once they come to the States, you're basically fighting the American gunocracy. But in their country, they're still going to have those cultural values in there. They will try to burst out of them from time to time because of what they get influenced by Western culture and social media. But by and large, with their parents at home, they're going to have those values. And you can still benefit from that generation of foreign women, but only for, really just chilling, dating, hanging out. I would exclude those women unless you have a pretty compelling reason in terms of marriage. I would just enjoy their company for things like that. The only time I would recommend even considering a long-term relationship or marriage, again, are really for specific cases. Some of these cases, I would say, speak to marriage, unless you've been burning to have kids, you're middle-aged, you have a deep understanding of the woman, her culture, her background, the language, and the social economic environment which she grows up in. Like, you've pretty much made it your mission to understand it. You've spent time in where she's from, her culture. You've really dug in and you are very clear in terms of your outcome. Maybe you just want a kid. Maybe you just want someone that you understand that, she's going to be doing her thing. You're going to be doing your thing. You're going to have this one kid, and you're going to be maybe making sure she's financially okay in these areas. So more like a business arrangement. So if you're taking that approach, then perhaps this might work for you. But again, you got to approach it with the detail and discipline and the rigor and the study you would if you were buying a 27-story commercial property and you're doing it for the first time. So you really have to know what you're doing. And so I'm going to end part 1 here. Next, I'm going to talk about the bad part 2. If there are any questions, anything I didn't cover, anything that wasn't clear, please put a comment below. Thank you.